All right, welcome back to the Queer Sister podcast. My name is Jasmine. I'm bisexual and my pronouns are she, her.
And I'm Natasha. My pronouns are she and her, and I identify as a lesbian.
Cool. So, what are we going to talk about today, Natasha?
So the other day I was on YouTube and I found this. Well, I didn't find. I've been following this girl for years now, Jade Fox, and she was talking about like the toxic energy and toxicity in the gay community, especially the Black gay community. But today we want to talk about just the toxicity in the whole gay community and how that can be harmful for people who identify in that community. And yeah, so that's what we're going to be talking about today.
All right, so I just want to just
Okay.
jump into it. Yeah.
Okay, I guess I could just start off with one thing that because I like wrote down a list of certain things. I'm sure I'm missing things out, and this is not like a dig at people, but just to kind of look at it and see how this can be harmful to gay people. Yeah. So one of the things that I wrote down was bragging about turning someone gay. Um,
Mhm.
Now I can understand, like, whatever, you're confident in yourself, like, yeah, oh yeah, I flipped her, I turned her out, I'm, whatever. When a lesbian says that, or like a bisexual says that about someone who may be identified as straight, maybe some people don't see the harm in that. But if we flip it over and say that a straight man said that about a gay woman, like, oh, I can turn her straight, I could turn her out, how toxic that is. So we need to look at it that way on the flip side. And then also it makes it sound like when you can flip somebody, quote unquote, turn somebody out, that's saying that it's a choice, that you can make someone choose a different thing. And we can even go in deeper down how that's a negative thing of conversion therapy. When you have an idea of thinking something can be chosen or can be turned or can be stopped, then you're proving to these people who, like Pence, who thinks that, oh, conversion therapy works, when we know that people who go to conversion therapy, they come out, they might say that they're straight, but they are just holding things down, suppressing their feelings, and it does not change you because you are born gay. You cannot change someone's sexuality. Just because someone was straight when you met them doesn't mean that you changed it specifically. You might have helped them realize, you might have helped them discover that about themselves. You might have made them comfortable to explore that, but you did not turn someone gay. So please stop saying that. Please stop saying that. Do you have any thoughts about that one, Justin? Have you heard
No,
me say that?
yeah, no, it's definitely, it reinforces that stereotype, that negative stereotype, belief where people think that your sexuality is a choice and that, if you're, um, yeah, but like anybody that you're with would change your sexuality. And it's very prominent in the bisexual community, or what people think in the bisexual community, how it presents. Where if I'm with somebody of the opposite sex, it's suddenly, a heterosexual relationship. And if I'm with somebody of the same sex, then it's a queer relationship. And it erases my identity if I'm with somebody of the opposite sex. And my sexuality doesn't change. I'm bisexual throughout. And I think that kind of plays a part into that. So that's good that we bring this up.
But I do have something on the contrary of what you're saying. I know you're agreeing with the things that I said, but there's something that I want to not disagree with, but just kind of poke at. When you say when a bisexual woman, per se, it gets with a man, you say it's not a heterosexual relationship. I disagree because it is a heterosexual relationship.
It's still a queer relationship because there's a queer person there, and that's what I believe, at least.
Okay, let me interject again.
If I enter into a marriage or a union with somebody of the opposite sex, do I suddenly not become queer anymore for the rest of my life, or now I'm just a heterosexual woman?
That okay, so I want to clarify for myself, for you, and for the people who are listening who are identified as bisexual, pansexual, queer. not when I'm saying the couple, the actual couple identity would be a heterosexual couple, because when you look at it, if they identify as a man and you identify as a woman, unless you guys are gender queer or something like that, if you identify as a woman and they identify as a man and you guys are together, no matter if you're bisexual or pansexual or identify as queer, it is a heterosexual relationship. It does not change your personal identity. Your personal identity will always be queer or always be bi or always be pansexual, but that relationship would be a heterosexual relationship. Heterosexual relationship means the opposite sex. That's what that is. Unless you got with a queer, a gender queer person or like a trans man, maybe you can say that's a queer couple. But like if you as a bisexual woman got with a lesbian woman, or a bisexual woman, doesn't matter, and got together, that would be a lesbian relationship because you two both identify as women. It doesn't take away your personal identity, and that's what I think people don't understand. So, like, if you and a man show up to at Pride, you are going to be seen as a heterosexual couple. Doesn't take away your identity. You could be with um, a bi man and you're a bi woman, but it's still a heterosexual relationship. You guys are queer in your personal identity, but it's a heterosexual relationship. Is that not true?
I don't know. Maybe I don't have enough knowledge on it. But when I'm with somebody that's of the opposite sex, I still identify myself as queer and still see it as a queer relationship because there's a queer person in that relationship. And maybe I don't know. Maybe it's just how that couple identifies that relationship that gets the final say. I know that in the eyes of society, it will never be seen that way, but it definitely, I think that those labelings of, heterosexual relationship versus a lesbian relationship is really damaging. I think that, further perpetuates, this negative stereotype that bisexuals don't know what they want, that they, as whoever, relationship that they're in, that they're, suddenly everything changes depending on who they love, and none of it's a choice. Throughout in my entire life, I will always be bisexual. I will always call my relationships, a bisexual relationship because I'm there. I'm continuing to be there until I die. Like that's not going to change. But I appreciate that, you explaining, that to me. I guess I could, I could agree in a way that that's how it's seen, but that's not how I feel when I'm dating one person versus another. So
First of all, Jasmine just said, thanks for mansplaining, but no. No, it's a little hard. No. No, and I that's why I asked you what you feel like, but also I'm looking at it from not straight up like, oh, a bisexual person or a lesbian person or a straight person. I'm looking at it strictly on label of definition of what a heterosexual relationship couple definition is and what a queer couple definition is. You know what I mean? The heterosexual definition would be opposite sex.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just really ignorant. I haven't taken a lot of gender studies or anything like that. Maybe I do need to look up some more information. I don't know.
That is not why I was saying this. That's why I said she's thinking I'm man. I will keep my mouth shut. And this is coming from someone who identifies as bisexual or queer. If she feels that it is a queer couple with one queer person in it, then I think that that's valid. And I will start looking at it that way. That's all I'm saying. I thought it was that way because definition. I'm all about words and definitions. And if we're going to go by labels, labels is just basically definition. You're trying to define something. And so I'm going based off of the definition. And so that would make sense. But if you say it's toxic and or you feel like it makes you being erased from the community, then I will respect that. And I will say it is a queer couple.
I appreciate that.
So for you saying that you were not educated enough, you have experience. Doesn't matter if you're educated on something, your experience and your identity helps you understand that topic better than I do. So I will go based off of your experience, and me will go and do my own research and bite my tongue on that. And I will agree, not to agree to disagree, but I will agree on your opinion. Let's go to another issue. Starting off strong. Okay, so this is another one I think that affects bisexual or queer people as well. Having to like quote unquote up your gay or be more masculine, to appear gay to others, or to like let other queer women, and this is obviously explicitly for queer women, but like to make other queer women know you're gay. So like you have to be more masculine and have to like wear hats and you have to wear beanies and this thing up to for people to like realize you're gay. And I can see it in a way of like these are just like little things, little touches to like, hey y'all, like I'm gay, look at me. But the idea of having to be more masculine, be more of a like quote unquote more manly to identify as gay, it will be harmful to people who identify as femme or feminine, and it might exclude them from the like the topic or the conversation. What do you think about that?
Oh, I mean, that's very apparent in my life. I present very feminine, and I think just in general, I, well, never really pursued anybody in the first place. That's a whole other issue. But when queer people look at me, they don't think I'm queer. I am. It's because I look very feminine, and I like really feminine things, like flowers all over the place. Like, it's that traditional, stereotypical, really feminine person. And so when I go out and all the first spaces that I enter, I'm always sort of erased. And I think there are people in the lesbian community that welcome us, but 9 times out of 10, I don't feel welcome. People straight up tell me I will never date a bisexual because of this X, Y, and Z. I will never date somebody who presents themselves as feminine, who has ever dated a guy, and I get shut down before I even open my mouth, just because of how I look and how I present. So that's my take on it.
Can I dig a little bit more into what you said, if that's possible?
Yeah.
What do um, us, I guess, other queer women or lesbian women say is the reason they won't date bisexual women?
The last time that this happened, right before all the craziness with what's going on in the entire world, the pandemic that we're in. When I was social on a camping trip, and someone specifically said, "Yeah, I would never date a bisexual person," and I shut it down real quick, and I got really upset because I've heard that over and over and over again. And even if I ever wanted a girlfriend, or like
Yeah. When, hon, when?
If I wanted to date somebody of the same sex, first of all, I don't feel like I can ever approach somebody because I'm always constantly thinking, are they going to be like, oh, yeah, no thanks, because I heard that you're bisexual, or they're, it just, I never, it's kind of like I'm in the closet all over again. Like will let them know that I like women, and then the bisexual word will come out, and they're like, oh shoot, bye, and I'll never hear from them again. That's happened 2 or 3 times now. I got off of Tinder and Bumble and all that, and it was because I was bisexual. And then on top of that, there's the whole stereotype of all bisexuals are slutty, and that we don't know what we want. We can never be in a relationship. We're greedy. We can never be in like mono whatever relationship. Like, I don't know. It sucks.
Monogamous is what you were looking for.
Monogamous, whatever. I don't know. So I think that's a lot of the reason why I stayed single for so long, that I never put myself out there, that I don't ever want to talk to anybody. It's because of that. So I don't know. You do with that what you will.
Yeah. So that stereotype of being greedy, cheating, not knowing what you want, or not being serious, and the idea like that they're indecisive is very, very hurtful. Yeah. So also that like the idea of ever being with a man, and that kind of I can bring into another one, the that you're not taken as seriously as a queer woman if you've been with a man, and that's also the idea of a gold star lesbian. And for people who don't know, a gold star lesbian is someone who has never ever had sex with a man. They've only been with women. They've never, not that they were ever interested, but they just never had sex with a man. So that makes them a gold star, and that's already problematic. Of that, like you get a pat on the back or you get a cookie pretty much for never involving yourself with a man, and that is harmful for not only bisexual people who have been with men, but also for lesbians. And that's why I think lesbians need to stop saying that term as well, because there's a lot of people that I know where I've heard stories where they identify as a lesbian, but they didn't realize until maybe they were 30 or 35 and they had a whole husband or they've had 5 boyfriends. And does that make them less of a lesbian because they've been with a man sexually or in a relationship? Does that make them less serious or or anything like that? People come to the terms of their sexuality at all different stages of life. And so when we look at it that, oh, you need to know at 4, yes, some people know at 4. Some people, they know at preschool. Like I worked at a preschool and I knew kids that know who they like. It's not based off of somebody else is saying something. It's not, oh, I put on a shirt on my baby that says ladies man. No, they choose who they like to be around, and whether it's a friendship or they like they think they're cute. Like at different stages. There's people who know around junior high, puberty time. There's people who know after they see someone for the first time, like this is different. I'm feeling different, or like they kiss somebody for the first time, or they've seen a movie that sparks some interest. So you can't, when you look at that, like, oh, a lesbian can never ever be with a man or be with a straight man or whatever, like it makes them less valid. That also hurts the bisexual community. What do you think of it? Obviously, I feel like you agree. What do you feel?
I agree with that. And then on top of that, there's the whole issue of people who didn't choose to be with a man and their first experience was unwanted and it was with a man. And so that gold star lesbian, thing, it also erases a lot of people who've been sexually abused. And not to say that, has made them, lesbian or whatever, that's not true. But that's, still part of the journey. That's for some people that, that will always be forever following them. And then you saying that in front of them, that really sucks. Like they didn't even have a choice to be the gold star lesbian. They, were victimized and abused and continue to be abused in the community with that term. So I would like to hear it dropped, forever. I don't want to hear it again. I'm sure a lot of other women wouldn't want to hear that again either. And then, yes, on that other point, being, bisexual women, who I've never once, I think, ever asked anybody out. And the only people who wanted to, well, there's, women as well, but the majority of them were men. And it's because of the way that I present. And then to have, the gold star label thing coming in from other places, like, it sucks. I don't really feel, excited to ever get out there in the dating world because of stuff like that. So,
Yeah, I didn't even think about the like sexual abuse aspect of it. That's a good point of that it could be unwarranted. But even like looking at that, like, yeah, you might not like those people wouldn't have wanted it, but there's people who did want to have sex with men at the time, and that is still valid. It wasn't that like maybe they were convinced or whatever, or they're just doing it. They might have wanted to. There might have someone who identifies bisexual as a teenager, and they needed that step to get where they were, or they are, what I mean? It doesn't matter what their journey is, but like we don't need to invalidate somebody.
yeah.
Yeah. So I have another one, and this is excluding trans people from the community. And I think that this is such a big one because all the things that are happening in the news, especially with trans women of color, trans black women, um, you know, getting attacked and getting killed, everywhere. But it's so crazy because they were the ones who jump started this community, the trans women of color, Hispanic, Black, all together, started this movement, started this so we can have a pride parade, so we can have this pride, this, and be proud of ourselves. And then we want to exclude them and act like they're not human beings and not part of the community and not queer themselves, that they're less than, or like looking at them like they have a mental illness when not too long ago they thought gay men and gay women had a mental illness. So why are we looking at trans people that way? And that's very, very toxic because I know a lot of, not me personally, but I know that I've heard that conversation before. And I mean, I can't get too much into like the gay male community because I'm not in it. And I don't want to overspeak, but there's obviously there's this idea of preferences and excluding of people, where I know that a lot of gay men will be like, oh, I would never get with a trans man because a trans man doesn't have a penis. And then it also that like that idea of sexuality depending on genitalia and only being on body parts is very, very harmful. And it also is a bad reflection on you. Like, why would I would never want someone to be like, oh, these gay people only care about sex. And that's the hard issue with the gay male community, where it's like they think, this is not what I'm saying they do, but society looks at them as these sexual creatures, these deviants. And that's why the AIDS crisis was so bad in the 80s, where like, oh, all they want to do is have sex, and that's why they're getting killed and whatever and all these things. But if we take that away, if you identify as a gay male, you should be attracted to men no matter what their genitalia is. If you don't know what their genitalia is, they're not showing it on the street, so you should just be attracted to the person that you were attracted to. Now, I understand a preference, but I guess I could get into that a little later. But like, what do you feel about the toxic energy around trans people in the gay community right now?
Well, trans women are women, trans men are men. That's the end of it. That's very, like, I don't know.
It's very true.
I don't know why, it's an issue. I don't know why people, are so outraged about what's in people's pants. Like, you like who you like, and don't ask people weird questions. If you're in a relationship with that person and they feel safe enough to tell you, like, more about themselves, then don't react by killing them or, something crazy. Just, like, that's when you have the discussion, talking about preferences or this or that. If it doesn't work out, you can safely walk away. Like, I do not get it. Why the world is so obsessed with genitalia and what's in your pants. Just leave it alone.
And I think
unless you're dealing with it.
Yeah, I have this, and I know that different people have different like a different timeline of when a trans person should or whatever come to terms, or like tell their partner or the person that they're interacting with that they're trans. And obviously everybody has obviously a different timeline. And I've heard a lot of different trans people say, like, on videos on TikTok or whatever, of what they feel comfortable with. So like, there's certain people who think that soon as they meet them, you need to let them know that they're trans, because they don't want to, like, that idea of, I don't maybe a straight man doesn't want to interact with a trans woman, and if he found out he was texting her for 2 weeks, he would be upset and pissed. Or like, you need to let them know before the first date, or you need to let them know before you guys are official, like, whatever the situation may be. Now, this is obviously very.
By the way, I have a penis. Like, when do you slip that in? Like, it's just, I don't know. It's so weird. Like, I think you should wait until it's, organic and you feel safe and it makes sense too. I'm not going to say it at dinner or whatever, like, in front of people, because you don't know who the person is who's sitting across from you. And I don't know, like, it sucks. I hope, I just wish that trans people could be safe, and I want to provide space for them to do so. I think more people should do that and treat humans like humans and just be considerate And I don't think you should get mad, or anybody should get mad at the fact that they were interacting with another human for 2 weeks over the phone. You can just be like, oh, that's not my deal. And then just be like, leave it. I don't know. Like, I don't understand the hatred. I don't understand why everybody's so obsessed with what's going on in somebody's pants.
Yeah.
It's just for me not really caring about that. Like, I really do care about the person. And so it would never make any sense for me for somebody to fixate over that. I want to have good conversation and connect deeper with, who a person is, rather than, what is and isn't in the pants.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like a bigger issue, because I don't know, like if women have such a hard time as well. Like, I know men have such a hard time with the issue with trans, whether it's a gay man having an issue with a trans man, or a straight man having an issue with a trans woman. I don't know if it's the same with women and men, but I think that men have a stronger reaction, and this is purely just my own opinion. There's no stats or facts on this, so I don't want to like claim that I know something. But I'm thinking that men in general have a hard time with trans people because they deal with such toxic masculinity of this whatever your sexuality defines them, where like a straight man, I need to be with a woman to prove my straightness. I need to be with a woman who was born with who was born a cis woman, and I need to be with them. I can't get with someone who was born assigned male at birth. Like, I can't, because that takes away, that makes me less of a man. Like, in their head, I feel like that's that issue with the masculinity. Because I just like, even if you found out, because me in my head, I'm like, even if you found out that they're trans woman or trans man or whatever the situation may be, why does it matter? Like, unless you're gonna be sexual with them, and even if you're going to be sexual, I don't understand how that would change your opinion of them. It's just one genital or one thing, whatever, that's different. That doesn't change their whole personality. Like, if you liked someone because you like them, it did change based off of, oh, I found out that and when they were at the hospital, the doctor gave them a blue blanket, which we need to stop with that kind of stuff. Blue blanket instead of a pink blanket. You know what I mean? Like, that idea. Like, why does that change? Why does it matter? Why do you need to know their dead name? And why do you need to know, like, that stuff is very menial, and I just don't understand why that is even in, like, why do you even care? Like, I understand. And then I want to go into this topic of preference. And I think that a lot of people will use preference. Like, gay men will use preference all the time. Be like, oh, I prefer a white, strong man. I don't like Asian. Like, they have that kind of stuff on the profiles, if you ever seen stuff like that, or they'll have that. Or they're very, very exclusionary to other people. And they have a very, very specific type of person that they're into. Whatever. So I want to say what the definition, like I said, I like definition. The definition of preference is. A preference, and now this is just me paraphrasing, okay? A preference means a greater liking over one thing or another. It does not mean excluding something. It means that, like, I'll say like this: I have a preference of oranges over apples. That means I like oranges over apples. That sentence did not mean I will never eat an apple. That sentence means I like oranges more than I like apples. That's a preference. I prefer, now this is personal, I prefer brunettes over blondes. It doesn't mean that I will never ever date somebody. It just means that I prefer something over whatever. Like, can you think of, well, I don't know, I was going to say what you think of some of your preferences, but it just means that we're not, so you could say I prefer, and I guess if we are looking at the issue of genitalia, you could say you prefer someone with a vagina over someone with a penis. I guess you can say that. It's, I mean, it's not, I guess it's weird because you could just go based off of genitalia. But it doesn't mean that someone with a penis is completely out. You know what I mean? So for me, who identifies, I guess we'll get personal. For me, who identifies as a lesbian, we've gone over this, identifies as a lesbian. I am attracted to women. That does not just mean cis women. That's very close minded if I only meant cis women. Like I would be stupid to exclude other people from the contending list. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something. But anyways, it just, so when I'm saying that I'm not excluding trans women, that I might have a preference over, and this is not a thing, but I might have a preference over a woman with a vagina, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't ever be interested in a woman with a penis. Like that would be stupid and closed minded of me to say I will never ever date someone with a penis. Yeah, a man with a penis. Yeah, I'll say that. That is, it's not a preference. It's my sexual orientation. I do not like men. So, like, you know what I mean? That's the difference. If you identify as a woman, you are in that bubble or like little dating pool. Whether you like, I could be interested, you might not be interested in me. That's the difference. But I have a preference of certain brunettes or whatever the situation may be, and I'm not excluding someone from that pool. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, if you say you like women, you like women. If you say you like men, you like men. And like I said earlier, that also includes the trans community. You know, I don't know, like I already said it, I don't understand those are the people who like exclude these human beings from humanity, but whatever. You definitely made some valid points. I think if anything, people could just consider that fact. And I think, it would make sense once they start thinking about it in that way. Yeah.
So that was like some of the things that I like wrote down on my list of toxicity in the queer community, especially the gay women community. I think we had a good little discussion on that, and I liked hearing your inputs because these were just things that came to my head. But yeah.
So on that note, thanks for listening to the Queer Sister podcast. I'm Jasmine.
And I'm Natasha. See you next time.
Looking to start your own podcast? Buzzsprout is the easiest way to go about creating a professional podcast. Natasha and I, along with more than 100,000 other podcasters, use Buzzsprout to seamlessly get your podcast onto every major podcasting platform. You get a really cool website, podcast players that you can use on other sites, detailed analytics, and a whole host of tools to promote your episodes. If you're ready to get started on your own show using Buzzsprout, click the affiliate link in the show notes to get a $20 Amazon gift card and to help support the show. Thanks.